So, as Gamblegate now apparently rises to, well, 15 more individuals involved, doesn't look like this latest Tory sleaze scandal shows any time of slowing down yet. But that's just another headache for Rishi Sunak. Today, instead, we are going to turn to Conservative Home once again and find out from Peter Franklin, who I think we've said before, he's one of the associate editors of UnHerd. And we haven't covered UnHerd before. We haven't covered it too much, but I've said this before. We've covered some crazy, wacky articles over the years from Conservative Home, but UnHerd makes Conservative Home look comparatively sane and sensible from what you would normally see over there. One of the recent articles I saw, I don't know if it's still on the front page or not, was about how Donald Trump needed to embrace crypto, and that by embracing that, he could somehow reform the entire world's economic system. And, cryptocurrency was the future, guys. Yeah, it's that type of place for that kind of particular conservative. But never fear, conservatives. Never fear, because Peter Franklin has a plan. Yes, he has a plan to try and save the Conservative Party. But before we do get into the man with a plan, and the plan is questionable, shall we say. I won't spoil it yet, but it's questionable, shall we say. Please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button, because down below there are links to my Patreon page, the Buy Me Coffee link where you can buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course there is the Pony Club down below as well. And it is Wednesday, so there is a new Pony Club video for all the Patreon members and of course the Pony Club members. Like I say, if you're a part of the Patreon, go to the Patreon page and you'll see all the Pony Club videos that we've done. If you are a Pony Club member from the YouTube stuff, if you go to the channel page, there will be a specific playlist just for you guys that has all the Pony Club episodes you can feast your eyes on. And of course, as I said, next week, going to be quite a weird Pony Club episode, because it will be the day before we go to the polls. I know, think about it. So I'll be doing something a little bit special, but it'll also be the 99th Pony Club episode. And then we'll walk into the 100th Pony Club episode, but we'll do something a bit special. Also, do not forget to join us on this Saturday's Good Morning, Good Walk. Like I say, I tend to start roughly around 8 o'clock. Again, the last Good Morning Walk under a Conservative government. It's going to be weird, interesting, but also probably funny at the same time, laughing at their misfortunes. But anyway, thank you very much to all the people who do help and support the channel. Like I say, links are down below. And of course, you can always help out the channel by clicking the like and share button. And if you are new, hit the subscribe button as well. So let's crack on over into Conservative Home and find out what this plan is to save the Conservative Party. Anyway, so let's begin, shall we? So Peter begins off with, we begin the election in the worst possible of any governing party in British political history. The leadership response was to run the worst campaign in British political history. And bear in mind, Henry Hill wrote an article just a few days ago as well for Conservative Home, where he put the failings down to CCHQ and said that whoever takes over has to reform CCHQ. But it doesn't really seem to be the most best idea, engaging in a huge navel-gazing operation about why you lost, because you've got a 14-year bad track record of bad policies, bad leaders, bad actors, infighting, all this stuff. They've got far, far more problems that they've got to sort out. And yet, as I keep on telling you, they are not. They are not going to do that. Look at the Will Atkinson video that we did about asking whether are we the baddies. Comes across as, well, look, if all the scandals of 2020 hadn't happened, we'd be fine. And you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. What about everything that came before that? You know? That's the whole thing. Anyway, back to this. Anyway, Peter continues. So I will admit I'm not Team Sunak's most enthusiastic cheerleader. Last year, I was expressing my shock at Downing Street's threadbare political strategy. Earlier this year, I did argue that a change of leadership was desperately needed. 4 weeks ago, I lamented the inexplicably foolish decision to opt for a summer general election. And 2 weeks ago, I sent out the disastrous consequences of that wrong-headed call. Really, Peter, who would the Conservatives have changed to? That would have resulted in a really bad election campaign that anyone, regardless who would have won, whoever you would have picked, would have immediately have had to call a general election. Would they have ran a better campaign than Rishi Sunak? I don't think so. I don't think so. Because you've already got the seeds here of what this guy's trying to plan and what his message is going to be, certainly after the general election. It was all Sunak's fault. And trust me, I can guarantee you now, we will see a lot of people blaming Sunak for everything. And don't get me wrong, Sunak will have his share of blame in all this. Don't get me wrong, there will be some blame on Sunak. But you are ignoring the massive myriad of problems that the Conservative Party has had over a decade of in power that you have failed to solve, issues you have failed to address. Like I said, look at Will Atkinson's post we went over. He was more complaining about the scandals that rocked the Conservative Party than the actual policies that have affected real people's lives. Says everything, as I said before, about introspection within the party. They are completely incapable of doing it. And that's why once we defeat them, and I repeat this message again, we have a once in a lifetime chance to absolutely destroy the Conservative Party. And they will not be coming back from this. You will hear the things that, Will said that we talked about, oh, we'll be back at the next general election. It'll be only a one-term Labour government. Well, they were saying that after 1997, and, well, look what happened there. But anyway, we're getting off topic. But anyway, back to this. So, but despite my mounting sense of despair, I did not foresee and could not have imagined that the election day would now be the nub of an election betting scandal, one that has disrupted the Conservative campaign just when Nigel Farage was running into difficulty, and just when we needed to focus the country on the implications of a Labour supermajority. I love it because they're complaining about a Labour supermajority, but remember, Boris had a supermajority as well. But once again, you will see this. The Conservatives will not think once for any problems that they have had since 2019 to blame on themselves. You will see people blame civil servants, blame anyone else but themselves. They had their own majority that they could have done anything they wanted with. There was no one to blame but themselves. And they are incapable of doing that. Even now, giving Labour a supermajority, there's going to be massive problems with that. Why? You had a massive majority and, you did nothing with it really at all. At least if we give Labour a supermajority, it does look like they'll, actually do stuff. Just stuff this guy won't like, of course, but hey, I don't see any problem with that. Anyway, For all these reasons and more, our poll ratings have now hit an equally unimaginable low. To split hairs, they have only been this low once before, but Liz Truss had to crash the economy to achieve that. You know, that's also one of the problems where, turn people off. Are they going to re-examine Liz Truss, her beliefs, her ideology that is still in the Conservative Party? Don't think so. Team Sunak, however, he continues, has got us into that very same territory again against a background of mid-economic optimism. Moreover, they've done it in the course of a general election campaign. Thus, we are now facing a range of truly awful outcomes. And it's going to be beautiful. So it says something that a 1997 style landslide defeat is now considerably the best case scenario. And that is hilarious that is now the best case scenario for the Conservatives. Yes, it will be a landslide defeat against the Conservatives, but they could claim to be at least an effective opposition. And I can't stress this enough. We have a big opportunity. It's possible it could happen. Not 100% guarantee, mind you, but it could happen that they could pull this off and the Lib Dems could become the main party of opposition, thus depriving the Conservatives of even more power. So just remember, guys, the bigger picture that lies before us and that could happen. Could happen. Not guaranteed. It's not likely, but it could happen. It's, we await the results. So back to this. But let's be clear. That would still be an appalling result, Peter continues. In fact, it would be worse than 1997 because in 1992, John Major won a very slim majority of just 21, which was then whittled away to basically nothing within 5 years later. This time around, however, the starting point was the majority of 80 gained in 2019 to end up with, say, 165 seats would thus be more a precipitous fall. It would absolutely be a massive fall. And to go from how Conservatives were feeling after that 2019 victory to where they are now is a massive U-turn around indeed. Something they are not willing to admit, like all the problems they've had since 2019 to now. Is there anyone in the Conservative Party? Because I would love to see someone be honest and just give an accurate depiction from like inside the Conservative Party. Say, okay, 2019, we were at this. Now we are at this. How did this happen? Why did this happen? Where did our policies go wrong? Where did we turn off the public? I would love to see an actual proper, post-mortem by a Conservative just to see what they would say and how they would be honest. And honestly, it's going to be funny because after the general election, none of them are going to be honest. We already saw what Will Atkinson said. Oh, if only 2020 hadn't happened, all those scandals, we'd be fine. They are incapable of any proper introspection. But Peter continues, as mentioned, that is now the upper limit of expectations, and we have to now brace ourselves for much, much worse. Indeed, there is no scenario too awful to dismiss absolutely. And I would agree with him on that. There is no absolutely awful scenario that Conservatives could end up with, and it could be glorious to watch. Anyway, the lowest ever number of Conservative MPs could be fewer than 100 MPs. Can't rule it out. Third place in vote share. That's what some polls are already showing. Lib Dems as the official opposition. Let's hope not. God, I hope so. But it's just all possible. Almost certainly, we'll see senior Conservatives losing their seats. The field of leadership candidate will then be will then be winnowed before the next contest even begins officially. Truss already appears to be in trouble in her own constituency, and Sunak can't even take his seat for granted. Again, would be wonderful if we saw Truss and Sunak lose their seats. Would be wonderful. I, and even there's part of me though, and it is a bit self-indulgent. There is part of me that would love to see Truss maybe just hang on there, because you can absolutely guarantee who would be putting their hat in the ring. Because I'll tell you now, Truss as like an opposition leader or even leader of the opposition would be absolutely insane to see. Bear in mind, I don't want it. It is a very, very self-indulgent. I will admit that, but hey, would be certainly interesting for as long as she lasts. Like I say, conservative civil wars gonna be going on for quite some time. But in the last few days, he continues, another horror has now moved into our realm of nightmares, and no doubt the bounds of possibility. The loss of what should be solidly blue seats, specifically North Hertfordshire and Wanley Valley, to the Green Party. To repeat, the Green Party, apart from yours truly, who saw that coming. That would be incredibly funny to see the Conservatives lose to the Green Party. Oh. Anyway, at this point, we may as well stop campaigning and start to work on a survival plan instead, because what comes next will not be pretty, nor pretty if she too loses her seat. Oh my word, Priti Patel as opposition leader, that will be again, she is not cut out for that at all. She is not cut out for that at all. And like I say, you're going to witness the next couple of years the Conservative Party just descend into infighting constantly, not just in the parliamentary party, but it's the non-parliamentary party where a lot of these fights and skirmishes are going to take place. And that will then affect what is left of the parliamentary party. And oh boy, that is going to get really, really cutthroat where that starts going on. But back to this. So, just to be clear, he continues, I'm not talking about the long and winding road to recovery, but something much more immediate, which is getting through the next year, or for that matter, the next few weeks in one piece. I love it. Let's not even think about recovery. Bear in mind, after Jeremy Corbyn lost, Starmer's team did set out a long road to recovery, and they've sort of achieved that within one election cycle. You know, you are going from one of Labour's biggest defeats in history under Jeremy Corbyn to potentially one of their biggest victories. So, hey, it's not impossible. You know, I doubt they'll pull it off because they are going to be constantly involved in navel gazing. And as I constantly said throughout this article, they cannot honestly have an honest retrospective about themselves, their policies, and how they've acted in 14 years of government, because they will not like what they say. That's why I'm also going to be incredibly interested to see if there is someone who does put out like an honest assessment of their time in government, because I can guarantee you there's going to be a lot of people kicking and screaming at that if that does come out. But anyway, so let's start with the party finances. I'd like to think that someone in CCHQ has a plan for what happens after the election. Has provision been made for the inevitable collapse in donations and other revenues? Do we have the money to collect liabilities and make redundancy payments? That's true. That's true. That could be interesting if you know you lose enough seats, the Conservative Party has to close down because it's just got no money left. Like I say, you have this election the opportunity to destroy the Conservative Party. Take it. Please take it. So he continues, can the leadership actually guarantee they haven't left behind a financial mess that means the next leader will now have to spend the next 2 years trying to save the party from bankruptcy? And again, trying to save the party from bankruptcy while all the Civil War stuff is going to go on as well at the same time. Speaking of the next leader, and again, we don't know who it's going to be because honestly, it's going to be left down to who's left. And after the election, I will probably make a very speculative video thinking who will throw their hat in the ring. But hey, it all comes down to whoever's left and, who wants to lead it. But oh boy, it is going to be very, very cutthroat and very, very interesting to see when that all kicks off. But so, speaking of the next leader, there's obviously going to be a contest this year. So let's hope the new 1922 committee doesn't learn the out-of-date lessons of the 2022 leadership race. That infamously took far too long, and there is a risk that this time Graham Brady's successor will try to rush things. Oh, the 2022 leadership election between, Truss and Rishi Sunak, where obviously Truss won. You've seen a lot of Conservatives say you took too long about this, but that was run to the rules. Like the 1922 committee and Graham Brady ran it to the rules of how the election contest should have been run. The reason why they say, oh, it went on too long, is because we'd already, I think, worked out really 3 weeks before the final of it, we knew who was going to win. But hey, they all wanted to be leader and all insisted on hanging on to the bitter end. It's not that the leadership contest was wrong, it's that you still had those desperate hangers on like Kimmy Badenoch, who hung on till the very bitter end, even though she knew she couldn't win, in the hopes that she might make it to the final two. But she hung on. I don't see you blaming Kimmy Badenoch for extending the Conservative leadership contest. But that's how the Conservative leadership contest was run through the rules. But hey, there you go. But anyway, he continues. So after a crushing defeat, we need the space to now properly debate what went wrong and the reforms that are needed to put things right. Again, will be an interesting debate to watch what happens because they ain't going to be honest about what happened. They will just go, oh, but we were right in what we wanted to do. We just need more crazy plans about how we're going to achieve that, and damn all the consequences, even though we were told there will be consequences if you want to do that. Anyway, as in 2005, we could use the party conference as a platform for each of the leadership contesters to make their case. If nothing else, it would give the media a reason to pay attention. And hey, depending on how desperate they are, you could see some interesting stunts, Paul, that's for sure. Whatever we can to try and afford the ballot to the membership is another matter. Expect a concentrated effort to try and blame party democracy for I don't know how you say that, the Dilo Grande of the last 5 years. Well, yeah, party membership does have something to say about that. Remember, they were the ones who voted for Liz Truss. They were the ones who voted for Boris Johnson. There is a lot to say about the Conservative, party leadership. Well, not the party leadership, but the party membership that put Liz Truss in place. Are you going to see any Conservatives actually want to tackle the type of extremism, the wacky ideas and ideology that have cropped up in their non-parliamentary membership? I don't think so. So again, introspection is not going to happen. So one can at least predict the smug opinion pieces almost word for word. Of course, what they won't point out is that it was one of our MPs who pressed the members with the lose-lose choice of Truss and Sunak. Anyway, I am not going to say we'd be on course for victory if only they'd given us the chance to pick Penny Mordaunt, Kemi Badnoch, or Tom Tugendhat, but it is difficult to see how we could have done any worse. Honestly, out of all those three, Kimmy Badnoch would have been terrible. There's this idea that, oh, Kimmy Badnoch would be wonderful, but when she has been put under public pressure in like question situations in committees and things like that, she has not performed well. There's been a lot of people in the Conservative Party that have said her performance would not bode well if she was the Prime Minister or even leader of the party, constantly under that pressure. How would she perform? I don't think she would have performed very well. Penny Mordaunt might have performed all right. Tom Tugendhat would have performed all right, although how whether he would have got his reforms through, that's another question. I very much doubt it. But it is difficult to see how it could be any worse. Of course, I'm trying to make big assumptions here, which there would be enough Conservative MPs in the next Parliament to actually completely fulfil a front bench, while leaving enough backbenchers for a meaningful backbench committee, which of course is the 1922. If there isn't, then we will need a new set of rules. That is the Conservative Party board actually looking to this. It doesn't seem so at the moment. It is all going to take place after. So, with our numbers likely to be so low, something needs to be made clear to everyone and our remaining MPs, which is we can't afford part-timers. There can be no slouching off to the boardroom or to the bar or gigs in the media. It will be hard enough to provide an effective opposition in the chamber or on select committees as it is, but impossible if our MPs are not fully committed. That's interesting. That's very interesting. So you have a Conservative saying, oh, well, maybe MPs shouldn't have second jobs. Maybe you should support the bill that had been put forward by Labour, I believe, at the time, that was struck down by the Conservatives. I think they stopped it even being heard. From what I remember, I can't remember now. Saying, hey, you shouldn't be allowed second jobs. Maybe that was something we will see under the Starmer government come in. But hey, something I would definitely like to see. As for the Lords, all new appointments of Conservative peers should be working peers. And a Labour supermajority in the Commons, the upper house, will be an indispensable check on the overwhelming power of a Starmer government. And something else has said that a lot of people have said as well. Currently, in the upper house, there is a Conservative majority because, well, you've had Boris, Truss, even Sunak himself have stacked the Lords in to try and work in their favour. Now, of course, it hasn't worked out fully in their favour, bear in mind, as we've seen. But Starmer has said he wants to appoint some Lords to try and balance it out. And if you want to get your policies and stuff through, he's going to have to engage in that activity. And bear in mind, I would love to see him reform the Lords, not abolish it. I think it needs to be reformed into an elected body more than anything. When people say, oh, abolish the Lords, they're talking about completely getting rid of the second chamber and starting again from scratch. No, just reform it, make it an elected body, and let it carry on with its current duties. Then we can swap and change, add powers, etc., as we go along. Reform it, make an elected body, etc., etc. I think I've been on this, line before, so we won't go too deep into it. But back to this. So the new prime minister might not abolish the Lords straight away, but he will pack the red benches with new Labour peers because, again, he's got to. Therefore, from our side of both chambers, it must be all hands on deck. There is no room for passengers. So that should start with Sunak's resignation honours. Unless Starmer goes, by the way, here's a bill we're just going to quickly run through Parliament. No more resignation honours. We ain't going to approve Sunak's resignation honours list. Or even go even further and go all the way back to Liz Truss's and Boris Johnson and say, yeah, you're no longer Lords. That'd certainly cause a few feathers. I doubt it would happen, but oh boy, that would be interesting. So, back to this. So, actually let him reward who he sees fit with the usual gongs, but peerages should be reserved for those capable of rebuilding the future and those who've not made such horselicks of the present reality. It's the least he can do. Finally, let me address the elephant in the room, or rather, the elephant who will be in the room if he becomes the MP for Clacton. Again, we hope not, but hey, it could happen. With Farage in the Commons, the danger is that Conservative MPs will abandon thoughts of general reform and opt for a quick fix of a merger with Reform UK. It's already being talked about by Priti Patel, Jacob Rees-Mogg. If Farage gets in, and there are other Reform MPs in there as well, and there is every reason to think that there could be a handful of Reform MPs in the next Parliament, they might very well decide to do that, to make Farage the leader. And oh boy, that's also going to kick off things as well. But he continues. That, after all, would then be very consistent with the pattern of the last 14 years, in which we've lurched from one ill-considered stunt to another. At least I'm glad he's acknowledging that. If we can't break that habit after a devastating defeat, then there is no hope for us. Don't forget that there are people out there who do not want to save the Conservative Party, or even, like Farage, mount a takeover bid. Rather, they want to replace us. For instance, we haven't heard even a peep or tweet out of Dominic Cummings for a whole month now. Clearly, the man who said he wants to, quote, plough the Tories into the earth with salt is up to something. If we carry on as we are, then he or someone else like him will succeed. Interesting indeed. But yeah, retrospective and rethoughts not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And then we've got a very good comment by someone down here. Let me find it. Here it is. So, Peter, honourable article, but wishful thinking. If the party had the brain power and mechanisms to think long term and fix it, they would have done so. It will now be weaker, angrier, and more divided after the election than it was before. It can't fix itself, and you have to ask, what's the point? Why try to keep together two wings of a party that cannot stand each other and preserve a toxic brand that is so ruined for anyone under 50 that the next 40 years and party structure that is so incompetent it doesn't work? And that is true. You've got two wings of the party that cannot absolutely stand each other. So there's a lot of people putting a lot of thinking of people think that the Conservative Party generally might split in two. There's a lot of people thinking that, and that could happen. That could happen. I think that's why Farage has set up really this election and pushing it this election. He wants there to be an alternative that the right wing of that party split can come and join and be that alternative. But that then makes a massive right-wing split vote, which, again, will only help us further down the line, as I've said before. So, just finish off with this quote. So, admit it. Boris is the Nick Leeson of the Conservative Party. Lots of things about the party were already sick, but he relentlessly gambled and killed it. A once great British institution is dead. Time to move on. We'll see. And then there's someone else. Here it is. Yeah. Not sure we actually need a plan as much as a strategy, but where is the general who can and indeed wants to develop said strategy? That's a fair point. Who's going to be the leader? Who is going to actually do that? So a plan should actually cover the next 7 days. As you said, the strategy should also cover a year and beyond. And aside, who takes second place in the vote share? Question mark. But before the declaration, there were discussions about changing horses. When you are on a charge, you need a lucky horse beneath you. I had no idea that this horse was so unlucky. My fault, all the signs were there. He took over because Truss was such a disaster and that anyone would have looked good. So now with the blessing of 2020 vision and having removed some of those rose-colored, I admit that I had been mistaken. We should have changed Steed. However, it is not only Sunak who should take the blame, but those who gambled and those who ran away and those who did not stand and fight must also accept the blame. Not going to happen. There is going to be a lot of blame thrown around in the Conservative Party, but I'll tell you what, no one is going to stand there and say, we accept blame. We should be taking the blame. Because I'll tell you what, the second anyone does that, it all goes on to them. Anyway, standing on the sidelines and waiting to see whose side you will enter the battle with is not an option even today. We now await the decision for who's to elect. It just... And then here's another good one. So at least some of the party's problems are literally staring people in the face. They are. The comments here clearly suggest to me that there is no consensus on what the future of the party should actually look like. Without agreeing that, you're stuck. And there isn't. There is no consensus. And without that, they are going to be arguing like rats in a sack for years to come. Long may it happen. And then someone else. The solution to recovery is simple. We need to find a leader. The difficulty is finding one. There being no obvious current candidate anywhere amongst our current senior leadership. True leadership does manifest itself often if anyone's lifetime, and in my long lifetime, I've only had the privilege of witnessing two. So yeah, that's Peter's plan to save the Conservative Party. That the party needs to do some introspection and look what went wrong and plan for a year and try and survive. He doesn't even bring up, as someone said, the obvious things that are staring the problems of the Conservative Party in the face. The fact that they've had constant leadership problems and infighting. Maybe you should take a look at that and how that has badly damaged your party. Because as someone else said there in those comments, both wings of the party hate each other. They can't stand each other. And I think a lot of people, as they are saying, that there might be a split in the Tory party that might generally make the party split. It'll be the right wingers who will probably split off, maybe join reform, maybe they'll start their own thing. Who knows? And then you'll have the One Nation Conservatives who are like the quote moderates, the Camerons faction sort of in the room. Whether they will do anything about it, I don't know. But I'll tell you what, over the next couple of years, there's going to be an almighty fight in the Conservative Party, and it is going to be funny to watch. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.